The time is just gone 20 minutes past 8 a.m. and we kick off this morning looking at the United Kingdom. Now, we've learned about the UK putting its army on standby and fuel pumps running dry. This is unprecedented in the United Kingdom. And to unpack what some of these issues are, we are joined by economist who is working in the transportation sector, Mohammad Arif Samad. Brother Mohammad Arif, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khairan for your time and welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, now clearly, looking at the UK, and this, as I mentioned, has been unprecedented. And at this point in time, a dire situation as far as fuel is concerned, fuel shortages. But just to unpack the background as to what has actually led to the situation that the United Kingdom finds itself in.
Okay, so now we're entering probably day 6 of the fuel crisis in the UK, with many more pumps or garages or petrol stations running dry, and increasing progressively as the week has gone. Situation has got worse. And people are finding it really quite difficult now to get access to, petrol, to be able to go to work, see family and friends. There's a real crisis at the moment with a lot of different politicians saying the government should now prioritize care workers and ambulances and really important staff that are vital for the infrastructure of any nation. So at the moment, we're in a situation where things do not appear to be easy and progressively getting worse. The government has actually announced just last night that they will send in army heavy goods vehicle drivers to help fill the petrol stations. So as I said, they're progressively getting worse. We can explore some of the issues around what led to this, but I'll just give you a short summary of where we currently stand at the moment.
Yes, I actually would like to explore some of the issues in the build-up to the situation that the UK finds itself in. So possibly, it would be quite useful, it would be helpful for you to unpack those as well, Mohammad Arif.
Okay, so we have to go back. To pre-COVID actually, and demand was growing. There wasn't any issues, and then when COVID happened, you actually had national lockdowns, and national lockdowns meant that the economy went to a pretty much standstill, with very little activity going on, and you could look at travel patterns during that period in terms of the vehicle traffic go right down because people did not have to go into work, and also to travel on the public sector as well went down, and that was part of the national strategy, not just in Britain but across the world, to try to control the virus. And so with that, the demand for fuel and petrol and gas declined as well to very, very low levels, much more so than had been the case ever before, and much more so than any expectations. Now, that for Britain, that happened at the same time as Britain coming out of Europe and Brexit. And one of the key features why Britain did that was to stop the free movement of labour between the European Union and the UK. That meant that you could not, there was a period of transition, which is 1 year, and then you had a period where you could not move between the borders of the UK and Europe. So there's two things going on, and when that happened, a lot of reading the transportation press, a lot of the drivers that were based in Europe actually left. Firstly, because of COVID, because there was no jobs, there wasn't any demand for their services, no one was traveling. And then secondly, because of Brexit, now they're having problems coming back to undertake their normal activities. Because if you think about what lorry drivers, heavy goods vehicle drivers do, they're actually all the time crossing borders. And for them, free movement of labor is very, very important. And this was actually highlighted about 3-4 months ago by the Road Haulage Association. This is a body of logistics and transport providers in the UK, and they highlighted to the government, and they wrote an open letter to the government to say there is a crisis in heavy goods vehicle drivers in the UK because of COVID, because of Brexit, and they were really, really concerned that when the economy reopens post-COVID, and this happened about 3 months ago in July when the restrictions were completely lifted, there is a danger there will be a shortage of drivers, not just of fuel, but for stocking supermarket shelves, other services that are vital to the kind of the running of a nation. And they put a letter out to the government about 4 months ago, and you can probably find it on the internet, the Road Haulage Association. And they are kind of flagged this as being an issue. Now we are in that quagmire, we're in that dire situation where, recoveries happen, people are beginning to move around, and you have a situation where there isn't enough supplies, not because necessarily because there isn't in storage, or there's a crisis at the oil fields and the refineries, but it's actually transportation from the refineries, from the storage to the actual petrol stations where there is a problem. So this is where we currently stand, in a sense that you could argue that the government was caught sleeping on the job and not really taking into account some of the warning signs that were given out. And we are in that situation now.
Yes. Now, as far as these drivers are concerned, it's basically a shortage of drivers that has basically led to this, and these are not other demands that obviously the transportation sector is actually making. But just looking at the reaction of the British government, and we've learned about the military obviously providing training for specialized drivers to try and ease the situation, for want of a better term. How is that going? Because we've learned about motorists who are desperate at this point in time, and just looking at the situation at the fuel pumps. What are some of the experiences? Have you had that experience personally? And what are people just experiencing generally at these fuel pumps?
Yeah. So at the fuel pumps, this is at the cutting edge of where the problem is at the moment. And, I personally felt it in the last 3 days. I've gone out every day to try and get some petrol. And it's not like I'm trying to fill up to a full tank. I'm at the moment just on and barely on empty. And I've gone 3 times, and all 3 times I've been unsuccessful. And each time I've gone to probably about 2 or 3 petrol stations, and they've all been shut off. The other problem is that once you do find a petrol station, you'll go there and there are long queues. So you're waiting for, I've heard reports, anecdotal reports of people waiting 3 hours. A lot of people, I know my Muslim friends, they are actually going straight after Fajr. Yeah, we're just daybreak in London at the moment, and this is when people are going really, really early after Fajr to try to see if they can get some petrol, because this is, at a quiet time. You'd expect to be at a quiet time. But generally speaking, people are waiting 2-3 hours if they're lucky enough to find a petrol station. Otherwise, it's forecourts are closed, and the supplies are not there. And obviously, you've heard, on social media, you've seen reports of, people, bare knuckle fighting on forecourts, because they've seen others taking more than what they necessarily need or apparently need, filling up water bottles and filling up canisters in addition to filling up their tank, which is causing a lot of irritation among drivers who are waiting to fill up because they think there won't be enough left for them. And generally speaking, there's a lot of social media kind of attention now, that as soon as anybody's aware of a tanker coming into a locality and filling up a petrol station, social media traffic rises to say that this petrol station is now available with petrol, so go to it. And so there's a swarm of more motorists going to that station just to get hold of that petrol. As I said, you're on 5 or 6 days prices, which is which for people who haven't filled up is getting worse by the day.
Mohammad Arif, just finally, how much pressure is there on the public transport system right now?
So that's a good question, because if you look at car transport is about 80% of all passenger kilometers in the UK. So the vast majority of people still use their cars. UK stands in the top 10 countries where households have at least one car, one or more cars. So therefore, the car is very important to travel. In cities, you have public transport, and that's fairly good, particularly in London. Outside of London, there isn't that much, really kind of comprehensive network of public transport. And so people do rely on cars. As I said, 80% of trips are by car. The car is the dominant factor in travel, and so therefore people need that fuel. And also the other thing to understand is that people now are coming out to full restriction removal, and so people are now beginning to use transport. And if they're not able to use cars, they will have to revert back to the public transport. And public transport was hit quite hard because people were, worried about interaction, and so therefore they preferred to use the car. So it was very much a car-led economic recovery, particularly in the cities. And so that meant that the demand actually increased, I would say, quite rapidly as we came out of restrictions. So public transport can play a role in letting off some of the steam that's building up in the kind of car market and with vehicle traffic. But as I said, a lot of people do rely on the car for really essential travel to and from work. As I said, 80% of travel, vehicle traffic is by car, and a lot of that is because people need it to work, and a lot of households have at least one car. So it's a very difficult situation. Also, public transport is, if the networks aren't there, is incredibly, in a lot of ways, is quite expensive as well, and it's not necessarily reliable, as reliable as it is in Europe, for example. So it's not always the perfect alternative.
Well, Mohammad Arif, Jazakallah for your time with us this morning. We wish you well. You are in our thoughts and du'as as well. And as are the people, obviously, who are battling at this point in time with the situation as it stands. Allah make it easy on each and every one of us, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.